Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Can anyone hear me? Can you hear me? Hola. Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great, good. I found out a working pair.
I can't get on the stream, by the way.
Okay, it is 5:35, so I guess we will start now. So, last week we kind of went over the basics of programming, the different languages, and like the what's unique about each one. And then we went over the Python download, and I don't think I went into enough detail about it. So I'm going to go over that again, and this time in more detail to make sure that everyone can properly download Python, because without Python you obviously can't like follow along the course as well. So there's going to be like a guide that I recommend you guys use if you still can't follow along with this lesson. So here is the link to it. So it's on Journal Dev, and so all you need to do is just Google how to install Python. So I'm just going to use this guide. So essentially first we're going to go to the Python website. So in your browser just type python.org. And so after you go to this website here, there is going to be a couple of sections that you see down here. So you're going to need to press on this download, and so the latest version is Python 3.8.3. And so you see all these new features and stuff, all these resources, but you want to go all the way down to files. And so you're going to see a lot of different types of files. So the only one that we're going to care about is this executable installer. So you're going to see that there are two executable installers. There is going to be one over here and one over here, but we're going to go with the 64-bit one. So we're going to click on that, and so you will see this download file, the progress of it down. I will post the link in the YouTube chat. So once downloaded, all you have to do is click on it. And so after you click on it, there's going to be two options. Is install now, and one is custom installation. So we're just gonna go press on install now. So press on that, and so it's going to set up everything for you, and it's gonna put everything in like the correct file location. And so this process will take a little bit of time, shouldn't take too long. And so after this first step is complete, it will open up another window over here. So it's essentially what happened is the setup was successful. So right now it's essentially installed onto your computer. So just close on there, and if you search up Python in here, then you can see that you'll have the IDE for Python set up, so you can just open that. And so when you're actually running the Python program, here, let me. Okay, so when you're actually opening up the Python program, you're going to see, first you're going to see this page with it's a shell. So essentially, if you were to type something like print hello world, then it'll print hello world like that. But you see that it won't save your code, so what you're going to do is you can go to File, and then New File, and so this will give you a completely blank page for you to write your code on. And so you're going to need to save this file to some folder that is dedicated to Python, so you can find it more easily. So that is essentially how the Python download is installed. So we're gonna switch back. So now we're going to get started with the lesson. The download was fairly simple. If you have any questions, ask them in chat right now. So I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm assuming that we can move forward. Okay, so we're going to go over a couple of the most basic things in Python. So we're going to go over the variables and types. So this is very important because how these types are defined and initiated will allow you to manipulate it in a certain way. And so each data type can be manipulated in a certain way, but you can't mix two data types together. I mean, sometimes in Python you can mix like some number types together and it'll convert the type for you, but making sure that you know all the different types is very important in programming, because it's how you can manipulate your memory space in the most efficient way possible. And so after we have these memory types, we're also going to learn basic operators, so how to like add numbers or like strings together. And so after that, we're going to go over the basic Hello World program, which is one of the first programs every programmer will learn how to write. Alright, so let's get started with the lesson then. So we're going to start off with the variables and the types.
Okay, so basically Python is an object-oriented program. So this means that you don't have to like declare variables before using them. So I'm going to talk about numbers right now. So the two different supports, okay, it supports complex numbers. I'll be talking about integers and floating point numbers. So like on the website, to define an integer, you just basically use the name of the integer. So in this case, it's my int, and you like type in a number, whatever number you want the integer to be, and then you can print my integer. And if you see run code, 7 appears. That's just basic print my int. So for floating point numbers, that's basically with decimal. So it's the same thing. You could either do the same thing as above, where you have a name, you say whatever number you want, and then you say print my float. And then you have, or you can do my float equals to float, and then whatever number you want, and then say print my float. And if you could see here, both types are shown, you know what the result is.
So this is very, very important when learning it, because as we talked before, the computer memory is stored in bits and bytes, and so the integers it can only store a certain number of bits. So it stores 1 byte, and so essentially it can go all the way up to 2 to the 8th, I believe. Um, which is 200. No, it's a bit larger than that. But essentially, um, uh, integer will dedicate less space than like a floating point will dedicate in the memory space. And so this is important when you are writing your program, because you want to make sure that you're most efficient in space. And so you know which type you want to declare in order to most efficiently use your memory. So that is the two main types in Python. And so in other languages, there are going to be some more types, but for now, these are going to be the two types of numbers that we will learn. So it's very easy to differentiate between the two. So for regular integers, we just go by the basic definition of integer, which is like any number without any of the decimal points, and floating point as the decimal points. And so the decimal points obviously will add more memory space because they are characters that need to be considered. So if you don't need to use decimals, then you can go ahead and use integers. Now, what's so good about Python with these different types is that it will declare the type for you based on whatever number you put into the variable. So essentially, when you define the variable like this does here, where my int is equal to 7, so since it sees that 7 does not have a decimal point behind it, it will automatically declare it as an integer. But over here, where this has a decimal point after it, it automatically declares it as a floating point number, and so it'll dedicate more memory space to it automatically. And this is one of the features that's special to Python, and also one of the reasons why Python is so easy to learn. And you don't really need to worry about the different types of variables that you're using, and Python will essentially do it for you. But if you are going to progress through the other languages like Java and C++, then then you're gonna have to learn how to define the different types of variables yourself. So the next data type that we're going to learn about is string. So string is an interesting data type.
So for strings, you just type name the string, like here it says my string, and then you type what you want the string to say, and then you just print the string, and then it will just print whatever you wrote. So here it says my string is hello, so and then it prints my string, so once you run it, it should say hello. And then after that, the next one uses double quotes, so you can use apostrophes. Unlike the single quotes, you cannot use apostrophes because it would be more confusing. And then after that, you have 1 equals 1, 2 equals 2, and 3 equals 1 plus 2. So it would just add whatever you have for the above. And the same follows with the next example. So it's pretty straightforward with Python, which makes it much easier to learn. And in the following example, you see here A, comma B equals 3, comma 4. So when you print that, it will just print 3 and 4.
Okay, so that was a lot of stuff. So this is a very simple overview of it. So if we were to get into more detail with strings, So here we can see that, as Cynthia said, strings can be declared in Python using single quotes or double quotes. And so typically it is recommended to use double quotes. One, because a lot easier to read your code, and it looks cleaner if you keep whichever type of quote you use consistent. And second of all, because single quotes is commonly denoted in many other languages as character rather than string. And so Python does not have this character variable type. So character is pretty simple to explain. It's essentially one character, and it can be any character. It can be like a letter, it can be a number, it can be punctuation. And so that character is stored using the single quotes. And so double quotes, on the other hand, is used for strings. So in Python, if you use either single or double quotes, it will still denote it as a string. And so over here we can see that double quotes was used because there is a single quote or the apostrophe that is being used in don't. And so this is another reason why double quotes is more commonly used, because we don't have to worry about our punctuation when we use double quotes, because, well, double quotes isn't used like as an apostrophe or something in common grammar. So string is special in that it's not a regular basic type like integer is, or floating point, or character is. It's actually something known as it's based off of an object. And so it gets into a little bit complicated. So string, if we really want to think about it, it's essentially a really long array of characters, because we can always split up the string into individual characters. And so these strings are going to be what we will learn later as an array of characters. And so an array is essentially a standardized length of basically any data type. And in the string implementation, it uses characters as its data type, but we can learn later how arrays is implemented in Python. So for now, all we basically need to know about strings is we define it using either single or double apostrophe, although double quotes is more commonly used. And we also learn how concatenation works, or how we can combine two different variables together. So this goes into combining both of the different data types. So this combines not only the integer data type, but also the string data type. And so over here we can see that we have 1 plus 2, and so we have this variable 3, and so 3 has the value 3. And so the reason why this can happen is because both of the data types are integers. And so since both of them are integers, Python inherently knows that it can add the two data types together and create 3. But if we were to define, say, 2 as a string type with 2 as its value, then we cannot. It will treat 1 instead as a string rather than an integer, and it will print 1, 2 rather than 3. And so it's kind of similar to adding two strings together, because the two strings they are not actual values that can be added, but instead just combined and lengthened instead. And so that's what we see here happening, and so that's what the print. And so another way to add them together is using comma. Now, comma is it's not as intuitive as using the addition sign, uh, but it will still work when you program in Python. And so over here, this line of code can be a little confusing. So we get a comma b is equal to 3 comma 4. So essentially, it's assigning the value of 3 to a and the value of 4 to b. How does Python know that 3 is assigned to a and 4 is assigned to b? Well, Python it will automatically take the kind of like the index or like the position before or after the equal sign, and then it will assign it to the same position on the opposite side of the equal sign. And oftentimes you don't really want to define multiple variables in one line, as this can get quite messy if like the values are larger or the variable names are longer. And so it's just as simple as expanding it into 2 lines, so it's like easier to read. So over here we can see an example of adding uh, uh, 2 integers and 1 string, and so you cannot mix the operators. And so we shall run this program, and you can see that you can't add the integer and string types together. Does anyone have any questions? You can type it in chat if you have any questions. Does nobody have questions? All right. So the last thing that we will look at for today is exercise. The exercise. So this exercise, so the target of this is to put everything that we learned into one program, kind of. So let's read the instructions here. So over here we can see that in this program, this is essentially it's a pretty good summary of everything that we learned. So I'm going to put this link into the live stream chat so you guys can worry about it. Complete it, sorry. So if you guys come up with a solution, you guys can paste in the live stream chat for next week, or put it through the WeChat, and we can confirm if it's correct or not. So next up we have a lengthened lesson on operators. So
Python has basic operators like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, remainder, and exponents. So as you can see in the first example, there is number equals 1 plus 2 times 3 divided by 4. If you think about it, that would equal 2.5. You can also try like make your own expression and see if Python returns the correct answer. Now with um, Python also has a remainder function that will give you the remainder from two numbers. So in the example, it shows that the variable remainder is equal to 11 remainder 3. And remainder can be expressed using the percent sign. So the remainder of 11 and 3 would be 2. So it takes 11 divided by 3 to the remainder 2. Now, if you use two multiplication symbols, you can show an exponent. So you can see that it says squared equals 7 with a double multiplication symbol and then a 2. So that means 7 to the power of 2. And the next one means 2 to the power of 3. If you run it, you will get 49 and 8.
Okay, so the next thing is using operator strings. One of the first things you can do is you can combine two words together using the addition sign. As you can see in that code there is first you do the hello world thing where you have hello and then it's split with the addition sign. And then that just makes a space. So it's hello space world. You can also use multiplication to make a lot of hellos. So this one is hello but times 10 because it's in the code. It's it's quotation mark times 10, so it's 10 hellos.
Alright, so we learned about operators with strings and arithmetic operators. We're not going to go over operators with lists yet because we haven't even learned about lists themselves, and it gets into something known as data structures, which we will save for a series of classes later. So, to kind of review how arithmetic operators work, so we know that there's these regular operators that we see in like our regular day like math stuff and our math homework and stuff. There's just plus, multiplication, division, and there's also subtraction. And the two new ones that we see are the modulus operator or the remainder operator. And so essentially this operator will just give you the remainder, and this is the squaring operator. And so these will vary from language to language. Like in Java, you will not see a power operator. Instead, you'll have to use a separate class, which is something that we might get into later on. And so strings and operators. So for strings, essentially there's two basic commands. You can either add them together, or you can make a print multiple times. So this is printing it multiple times is completely unique to Python. You won't see this in other languages. It's kind of interesting. So essentially, you just multiply it by however many times you want it to print. In other languages, you're going to have to loop over a certain number of times, and that will allow you to print it however many times you want to. So our final thing is the Hello World program. Um, so the Hello World program, it's pretty simple. So we learned how to print, and so we saw that we could just print whatever was in double quotes. And so the basic program that we can print is Hello World. So if we go over here, and we change this to Hello World, and then we ran this, then we could see that Hello World was indeed printed. So this is going to be a program that I want you guys to write this week, and so that is kind of the very first thing that any programmer would do. Thank you, and if you guys have any questions, put it in chat. Okay then, if nobody has any questions, then I guess we are done. Thank you for listening.
Yay.